On my 63rd birthday, my son drove me far out into the countryside, stopped by an old broken-down shack, and said, "This is your gift. You'll live here now." He left me out there in the middle of nowhere. But he had no idea who lived next door. A neighbor who was already walking over to help. Hello, my dear listeners. Thank you for joining me today. If you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. I love reading your comments and finding out which city or country you're listening from. So don't be shy, drop a comment below. Now get comfortable. Let's begin. For most of my life, I never thought anything had happened to me that was worth a long story. I lived quietly, unnoticed. Even in my own condo, the one my late husband Richard and I bought decades ago, I slowly became like a shadow, like an old piece of furniture that's just there but no one notices anymore. For the last 10 years, that condo hadn't really been mine. It belonged to my son, Michael, and his wife, Vanessa. I stayed in the smallest room, a storage closet turned into a bedroom. All my things, my books, Richard's photographs, his old armchair where he used to read the newspaper, ended up there too, packed together while Vanessa filled the rest of the house with her bright, trendy, and empty decorations. I didn't complain. What was the point? All I ever wanted was for my son to be happy. Every morning was the same. I woke up before everyone else, around 6, making sure not to make any noise. I tiptoed into the kitchen and started cooking grits for Michael. Then I made 2 kinds of tea, strong black tea for him, and an expensive herbal blend with imported petals for Vanessa. That tea always made my throat itch. I brewed myself a plain cup of black tea and quietly drank it alone in my little room, just to stay out of the way. My social security check went straight into our joint account. "Mama, why do you need money?" Michael would say, avoiding my eyes. "We buy everything together." And I'd nod. He was right, wasn't he? My clothes were old hand-me-downs, and I barely went anywhere, just to the grocery store or the pharmacy once in a while. All my dreams had faded away, except one, to see my son truly happy. I even gave them all the money I'd saved for cataract surgery when Vanessa suddenly needed a new designer handbag. "Mommy, you understand, right?" she said sweetly, hugging me. "Michael's co-workers all have rich wives. I have to look the part. It's important for his career." Michael nodded, grateful. So I gave them the money. And later, instead of surgery, I just bought stronger reading glasses. In that house, my opinion didn't matter. If I said the soup was too salty, Vanessa would purse her lips. "Mama, you're just getting older. Your taste buds aren't the same anymore." And if I tried to share advice from my life, Michael would smile gently and cut me off. "Mama, things are different now. We'll figure it out ourselves." And they did, without me. I was no longer a mother. I was just a cook, a cleaner, a free ATM, an invisible woman whose presence was convenient, but not needed. Some nights, I'd sit in my old armchair and stare at Richard's photo. "Richard," I'd whisper, "did we raise our son right? He's a good boy, isn't he? Maybe that's just how life is now." Richard's picture stayed silent, and I convinced myself that I was doing the right thing. After all, a mother should sacrifice everything for her child, shouldn't she? Then came my 63rd birthday. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe a small bunch of daisies, my favorite, or a box of dark chocolates I loved. That morning, Vanessa was oddly sweet. She hugged me and chirped, "Happy birthday, Mommy. Michael and I have such a surprise for you. You're going to love it." For a moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, excitement. Like a child waiting for a miracle. Michael kept checking his watch nervously. "Get ready, Mama," he said. "We're going to pick up your gift." I put on my best dress, the only one that wasn't worn out. It was a simple floral gingham dress. I looked at myself in the mirror, an old woman with tired eyes, but a small spark of happiness. Vanessa stayed home, saying she had a headache. "You two go ahead," she said, waving her hand. "You can tell me all about it later." We drove for a long time. The city faded into suburbs, then into endless fields and woods. At first, I asked where we were going, but Michael kept his eyes on the road. "It's a surprise, Mama. You'll see." I fell quiet. My stomach tightened. The road ahead didn't look like it led to a nice place. It looked lonely, abandoned. Finally, We turned onto a rough dirt path. The car shook so hard my teeth rattled. All around were overgrown fields and crooked electric poles. Then I saw it. What was left of a village. A few half-sunken houses, blackened with age. Not a soul in sight. Michael stopped beside the ugliest one. It wasn't even a proper house, just a shack with a sagging roof and boarded windows. Weeds grew taller than a man, and the fence looked ready to collapse. "We're here," he said flatly. I froze. This couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake, or a cruel joke. Michael got out, opened the trunk, and pulled out my old canvas bag. The same one I used for weekend trips 20 years ago. Inside was a change of clothes, a robe, and a bar of soap. He set it down by the overgrown bushes. "There you go, Mama," he said, pointing at the shack. "This is your gift. Vanessa and I bought you your own place. Fresh air, peace and quiet. It'll be good for you." His words fell heavy, echoing in the silence. I stared at him, my son, and I didn't recognize him anymore. His face looked cold, his eyes empty. There was no anger, no pity, just tired irritation. "Michael," I whispered, my voice trembling. "What is this?" "Why, Mama, don't start," he said with a frown. "This is best for everyone. You need some time away from the city, and we need space. Vanessa's pregnant." He said it like it explained everything. Then he climbed back into the car and slammed the door. I just stood there, staring through the windshield. He started the engine. The roar broke the silence like a scream. And at that moment, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger or pain, it was something deeper. Like a lock turning inside my chest, closing for good. Click. The warmth I had carried all my life turned to ice, clear, cold, and still. The car drove off, raising a cloud of dust. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just watched as the silver car grew smaller, turned into a dot, and disappeared around the corner. The dust settled. The smell of gasoline faded. And there I was, just me, my old bag, and a dead house on the edge of a dying town. Silence surrounded me. And in that silence, for the first time in years, I heard myself. Not the mother, not the mother-in-law, not the helper. Just me. Margaret Hayes. And this Margaret whispered, calm and steady. "That's it. Enough." I realized this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. No one was ever going to control my life again. I was taking it back. The dust from my son's car slowly settled over the tall weeds by the roadside. I stood still, listening to the sound of his engine fade away into the distance. When even that was gone, a silence filled the air. One I hadn't heard since I was a little girl visiting my grandmother's farm. But this silence was different. That childhood silence had been alive, filled with crickets, wind, and whispering trees. This one was dead, heavy, empty. I slowly turned toward my so-called gift, a wooden shack darkened by age and weather, its windows boarded shut. The porch leaned to one side, and one of the steps had rotted through, showing a hole full of damp, decayed leaves from last year. Weeds and wild vines had taken over the place, a sad jungle of neglect. It was a picture of pure abandonment. A place forgotten by everyone. A place where I was meant to be forgotten too. Tears? No. Inside, I felt nothing. Completely dry. The icy lock that had clicked in my chest earlier had frozen any tears before they could form. My despair was left somewhere far behind. Maybe in the car that carried my son away. Here on this lonely land, it was just me, and a cold, sharp clarity in my mind. I stepped up onto the porch, carefully avoiding the broken plank, and set my bag down on the edge that was still solid. My eyes scanned the wreck before me, but my thoughts drifted far away, to my bright, clean 3-bedroom condo on Peachtree Road. The same condo where Vanessa was probably already deciding what color curtains to hang in what used to be my room. That was the key word. Looking at this crippled old house forced me to remember something I had pushed away for years, afraid to even think of it. I remembered Richard's words. We had been sitting in our kitchen about 10 years before he passed away. He was serious that day, unusually firm. He laid some documents on the table and looked me straight in the eyes. "Evie," he said, "I'm going to the lawyer tomorrow. I'm transferring my share of the condo completely to you. You'll be the only owner." I had waved my hands back then, confused. Why, Richard? We're a family. We have a son. He shook his head. A son is one thing, but life is long. Anything can happen. You're all I have. I just want to make sure you'll always have a roof over your head. One that's yours and no one else's. I hadn't thought much of it then, but I did what he asked. After he died, all the papers were officially filed in my name, Margaret Hayes, sole and rightful owner. Michael didn't know. He assumed the condo was shared inheritance that would someday naturally become his. I never corrected him. Why would I? It felt petty, like I didn't trust my own son. But oh, how wrong I was. Then another memory surfaced, even more important. About 5 years ago, I'd received a letter about an inheritance. A distant cousin from Birmingham, Alabama, someone I'd met only once as a child, had passed away. She had no family, and she left me her small one-bedroom apartment. I went there, signed all the paperwork, sold it right away, and put every dollar into a separate savings account. I told no one. Not Michael. Not Vanessa. At that time, they were taking a huge loan to buy a new car. I knew what would happen if they found out. The money wouldn't be stolen, but it would vanish into urgent needs, status, and the future. Just like all my other savings had disappeared before. So I stayed silent, not out of Hayes but out of self-preservation. Something inside me that I thought had died long ago had quietly come back to life. That account was my secret weapon, my last line of defense. These thoughts didn't come to me like hazy memories. They were sharp and clear, like someone had flipped on a light in a dark room, and I could suddenly see all the tools I had to rebuild my life. I opened my bag. Michael must have packed it in a hurry. An old robe, slippers, a towel, and a bar of laundry soap. But at the bottom, I found my true savior, my old flip phone. Vanessa always mocked it, calling it my grandma phone. They had bought it for me a few years ago so I could stay in touch. It had no internet, no fancy features, just the basics. But what they didn't know was that inside that little phone were the most important numbers in the world to me. I pressed the power button. The battery was nearly full. I always kept it charged out of habit. But the screen showed no signal. My heart skipped for a moment. Was all this for nothing? I looked around. The house sat in a small valley. Maybe I just needed to climb higher. So I started walking up a narrow, overgrown path toward a hill. Thorns caught my dress, branches scratched my face, but I didn't care. I kept my eyes on the phone like it was a compass guiding me out of hell. Finally, at the top, beside a crooked old cedar tree, 2 faint signal bars appeared. Enough. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Mr. Douglas, bank. He was the branch manager, around Richard's age. He'd known me for decades, since the day Richard and I opened our first account together. I pressed call. The ringing dragged on before I finally heard his familiar, slightly tired voice. Hello. Mr. Douglas, hello. It's Margaret Hayes, I said, my voice calm, steady, almost cold. Margaret. Good afternoon, he said with surprise. How can I help you? Mr. Douglas, I need you to do a few things for me right now, urgently. I'm listening. First, I said, block every power of attorney and every access tied to my son, Michael Hayes. All of it. No exceptions. There was a long pause. Are you sure, Margaret? Absolutely. I cut in. Second, redirect all my retirement deposits that go into our joint account. Move them to my personal savings account. The one I opened 5 years ago. You remember? Yes, I do, he replied quickly. It will be done. And third, I continued, block him from viewing any of my account balances. From now on, no one touches or sees anything without my personal confirmation. Every transaction needs my approval. I understand, Margaret. Everything will be handled within an hour. Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Goodbye. I ended the call. The first part of my plan was done. Now for the second. I found another number, Ethan Cole, attorney. He had helped me with my cousin's inheritance. A young man, smart and thorough. He answered almost immediately. Ethan Cole, attorney at law. Ethan, hello. It's Margaret Hayes. We worked together on the Birmingham property. Mrs. Hayes. Of course I remember. How are you? Has something happened? Something has, I said calmly. I need your help. It's about my condo on Peachtree Road. I need to confirm my sole ownership officially and make sure no one, not even my son, can make a claim to it." He paused briefly, understanding. "I see. You want to secure your property completely. That's wise. If you email me a copy of your ID and property documents, I'll begin the process. I can even prepare a cease and desist notice if needed." "I can't send anything right now," I said. "I'm out of town, and the documents are back in the condo. But can you start by checking with the county register and pulling all the records?" "Of course," he said confidently. "I'll start immediately. You can count on me, Mrs. Hayes." "I am counting on you," I said quietly. "Thank you." When I lowered the phone, the cold feeling in my chest was still there, but it had changed. It wasn't the cold of shock anymore. It was the cold of steel, the cold of purpose. I walked back down the hill toward the shack. And suddenly, it didn't look like a grave anymore. It looked like a base. A quiet, secret place where I would begin my quiet war. Right about then, I knew Michael and Vanessa were probably sitting in my living room, drinking champagne and laughing. "Finally, we got rid of the old lady," Vanessa would say, raising her glass. "Now we can start renovations and live properly." They were celebrating their victory, but they didn't realize they had already lost the war before it even began. I stood at the doorway of my new, temporary shelter. For the first time in years, I took a deep breath. The air smelled of rot and rain, yet it felt pure. It was the air of F. Haysom. For the next few hours, I sat on the porch, which surprisingly held my weight, and stared at the wild overgrown yard. The setting sun painted the sky in soft colors, pale pink, orange, and fading gold. The air was thick with the scent of wet leaves, earth, and something else, something untamed. The city never smelled like this. The city smelled of exhaust fumes, dust, and hurry. Here, time had stopped. Everything felt frozen, like this forgotten town itself. When darkness fell and the night air crept under my thin dress, I knew it was time to move. Sitting there wouldn't warm me or fill my stomach. The cold inside my chest gave me strength, but my body still needed care. I stepped carefully across the old boards and pushed open the door. Inside, the air was heavier, thick with dust, mouse droppings, and the smell of old, rotting wood. Moonlight slipped through the cracks in the boards, painting strange patterns across the floor. I pulled out my phone and switched on the flashlight. The weak beam revealed a small stove with chipped tiles, a table coated in gray dust, and an overturned stool. I wasn't afraid. Not even a little. What I felt was focus. The calm, serious kind. Like a woman about to get to work. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was taking back control, one step at a time. There were 2 rooms inside. One had an old iron bed with sagging springs. The other was empty except for a pile of rags in the corner. The floor creaked under my feet, but it held steady. The house was old, yet strong. It hadn't fallen apart, just fallen asleep. My first task was to find water. I stepped outside with a flashlight, searching around the property. And then, almost like a miracle, I saw it behind the house, hidden in the weeds. An old well. Its wooden frame was dark with age, the oak handle thick and heavy. The chain was rusty but still strong. I turned the handle with effort. It squeaked and groaned, but the chain began to move. A few moments later, I heard a dull splash. Water. There was water. That felt like my first small victory. I found an old metal bucket on the porch. Surprisingly, it wasn't rusted through. After a few tries, I pulled up the bucket, full to the brim. The water was icy cold, smelled a bit earthy, but it was clean. I carried it into the house, my back aching from the unfamiliar work. For the next 2 days, I kept myself busy. I didn't think about Michael or Vanessa. My whole world shrank to this house and yard. In the shed, I found an old saw and an axe. I chopped dry branches from a fallen apple tree and started a fire in the stove. At first, the smoke filled the room, but once the chimney warmed up, it drew beautifully, and soon, the place was filled with a comforting heat. I found old newspapers and rags, scrubbed the table and floor until the wash water turned black. I dragged dry straw from the shed, stuffed an old mattress I found in the attic, and made a bed that was at least a little softer. I lived like Robinson Crusoe. and all that hard work slowly cleared my head. Each evening, I climbed the small hill behind the house to catch a phone signal. 2 bars, my tiny link to the world. I didn't call anyone. I waited, because I knew they would. It happened on the 3rd evening. I was sitting on the porch, sipping herbal tea made from currant leaves I found in the yard. Then the phone rang, loud and sharp, cutting through the quiet. Michael's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring a few times before answering. Inside I felt calm. "Yes," I said. "Mama. Finally. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for an hour." His voice carried that familiar tone. A mix of irritation and superiority. "I haven't been walking, Michael. I've just been breathing the air. There's plenty of it here," I said evenly. He sighed. "Okay, so how are you settling in?" He sounded like someone forcing small talk out of obligation. "Little by little." "Thanks for checking," I replied with quiet irony, which of course went right over his head. "Listen, Mama, something happened. Vanessa's card didn't work at the store, your supplementary one. But there's definitely money there. I checked this morning. You didn't press something by mistake, did you? Maybe it's a bank glitch. Can you call them?" Ah, there it was. The first tiny crack in their perfect little world. I said nothing. I just let him talk. "You need to call and tell them everything's fine. Vanessa's upset. She wanted to buy a dress." I pictured it. My daughter-in-law standing in a fancy boutique, confidently handing over my card, only to see decline flash on the screen. Her surprise, then her outrage. "How dare it? Mama, are you listening?" Michael pressed. "I hear you," I said quietly. Then I heard him cover the phone, but not well enough. He whispered to someone, and I recognized her voice immediately. Vanessa. Sharp, cold, and full of disdain. "Why are you even talking to her?" she hissed. "She's pretending. Acting all tough now. Hurt her feelings, did we? She'll run out of money soon enough and come crawling back. Tell her to fix it. I need that dress." Then Michael's muffled reply. "Tiff, wait." And her voice again louder. "Wait for what? The guy for the kitchen estimate is coming tomorrow, and we haven't paid the property tax. I got a message about the debt today. What did she turn that off to? She's losing it. We shouldn't have bought her a house. We should have found her a nursing home. See now. Pretending. No money." Those words didn't hurt me anymore. They confirmed what I had already known the day he left me by that road. To them, I wasn't a mother or even a person, just an old thing that stopped being useful. Broken furniture that needed replacing. That tiny bit of hope I'd been holding, that maybe I was overreacting, vanished completely. The cold inside me hardened like stone. Then I heard Michael's voice again, back on the line. "Mama, are you there? So will you call the bank?" I took a deep breath. The air was clean and sharp. "No, Michael," I said calmly. "What? What do you mean no? You can't or you won't." His disbelief was almost funny. "Figure it out yourselves," I said, and ended the call. I stared out at the darkening yard for a long time. I wasn't angry anymore, just quiet and sure. They had judged themselves. They thought this was some act of rebellion, a silly show. They couldn't see that this wasn't a performance. This was the final curtain, and it was falling on them. Days passed. I stopped counting. 4th day, 5th day. It didn't matter. Here, time was measured by small victories. A swept floor, a clean bucket of water, a warm fire in the stove. That first anger I'd felt had settled deep inside me, cold, solid, and steady. I no longer thought about Michael or Vanessa. I thought about me, and that was something new. On the 2nd day, I explored the attic. The ladder was shaky, but I climbed anyway. Mostly, I found junk and cobwebs, until in the far corner, under a pile of sacks, I saw a small wooden chest. I brushed off the dust, lifted the lid, and sunlight from a hole in the roof fell on what was inside. Neat stacks of old letters tied with string, and a thick velvet-covered album. I carried them downstairs, sat on the porch, and opened the album. Faces looked back at me. Serious men in uniforms, women in headscarves, round-faced children, weddings, soldiers, picnics in fields. A whole life once lived in this house stared at me from those fading photos. I didn't know them, but somehow, I felt connected. They had lived, loved, worked, raised children, just like me. Then I thought about my own album back in the city, the blue one with pictures of Richard and me. Our wedding, Michael's birth, his first day of school, our trip to the ocean, Richard and I sitting in the park a year before he died. My apartment wasn't just a place. It was part of my story. Every cup, every scratch on the floor, they all held memories. And the thought of strangers living there now cut deeper than any insult. That's when I realized I wasn't fighting for property. I was fighting for my past, for my right to my own life. That evening, I climbed the hill again to check my signal. I decided to call my lawyer, Ethan Cole. I didn't expect miracles, but I needed to know things were moving. He picked up right away, but his tone was different. Tense. Mrs. Hayes, good evening. I'm glad you called. I was just about to reach out to you. Is something wrong, Ethan? My heart began to pound. Well, he said carefully, we've run into some complications. I checked everything. Your ownership of the condo is clean and official. You're the sole owner. So what's the problem? I asked. He hesitated. There's an encumbrance on your property. Encumbrance? I repeated. What does that mean? It means your condo has been used as collateral for a large loan. It can't be sold or transferred until that's cleared. The air around me turned cold. What do you mean? Who did that? He sighed. Mrs. Hayes, according to the records, your condo is being held as security by a commercial bank. A mortgage for a very large amount was signed 8 months ago. My breath caught. 8 months. Last winter. I remembered being sick, pneumonia. 2 weeks in bed with a high fever, barely conscious. Michael was at work most of the time. Vanessa stayed home to take care of me. She'd bring me soup, change my compresses, and hover with papers in her hand. Mommy, these came from the tax office. You just need to sign them. Don't get up, I'll bring them to you. Mommy, this one's just a form for the HOA. It's nothing serious, just initial here. I could barely see the words back then. Everything blurred from fever. I trusted her. She was my son's wife, my family. So I signed over and over, just wanting to rest again. Ethan, I whispered, forcing myself to sound steady. Is my signature on it? Yes, he said softly. You're listed as the borrower. It's notarized. I've requested copies, but I already suspect. He didn't need to finish. I understood. It wasn't just forgery. It was betrayal, deliberate, calculated betrayal while I was helpless. They used my sickness, my trust, my love. While I was fighting to breathe, they were tightening a noose around my home. How much? I asked. My voice sounded like metal scraping on glass. He told me. The amount was enormous, almost equal to the value of the condo itself. Money I could never repay. Something broke inside me. Not just broke, turned to ash. That last fragile thread tying me to faith in my son, and his wife burned away completely. I finally saw it all clearly. Their plan wasn't just to throw me out. It was worse. They had taken everything. Using my life as their loan security. They spent it on luxury, on renovations, on a dress, on comfort. And when the time came to pay, they'd simply let the bank take the condo. They moved me out here on purpose, far away, hidden in this wilderness, so I wouldn't interfere, wouldn't ask questions, wouldn't find out anything until it was too late. This broken house wasn't a gift. It was supposed to be my tomb. A place where I'd quietly disappear while they finished swallowing the leftovers of my life. All my bitterness, mother's pain, and doubts vanished at once. A cold, clean, righteous anger washed over me. This wasn't just anger anymore. It was the feeling you get when you see real, undeniable evil. And you know you have to stop it. Not for revenge, but for justice. For my husband's memory. He always wanted to protect me, and for myself. Ethan, I said into the phone, my voice like steel. I understand. Do everything we need. Pull all the documents. Prepare the lawsuits. We're going to fight. I've already started, Mrs. Hayes. I'm on your side. I know, I said and hung up. I walked down the hill slowly. The sun had set, but I felt like I could see everything. Every blade of grass, every stone on the path, sharper than ever. The world hadn't changed. I had. Before, I only wanted what was mine back. Now, I knew I had to go all the way. They had awakened something in me I didn't know I had, and they would regret it. The mortgage news didn't break me. It hardened me, like metal plunged into ice, then fire. I didn't crack. I turned into steel. All this time I thought I was fighting for my past, for memories, for fairness. Now I knew I was fighting for my future, for my right to simply live. The next few days passed in a blur, but not the blur of despair. It was focus. I stopped noticing the small inconveniences, the squeaky bed, cold water, and the stale canned food from the root cellar. Those things faded into the background. My body handled the chores automatically while my mind worked nonstop, clean and sharp, like a well-oiled machine. I cleaned the one room with the stove until it was spotless. I found an old wooden table in the attic, scrubbed it, and made it my headquarters. Every evening I climbed the hill again. It wasn't just checking signal anymore, it was a war council. Ethan Cole and me. He became my eyes and ears in the city, that other life that was already dead to me. Mrs. Hayes, we've filed a complaint with the district attorney about mortgage fraud, he said in his calm, professional tone. I also sent the bank your medical records from the time the agreement was signed. They're obligated to start an internal investigation. Good, I said. What's next? Next we wait, Mrs. Hayes. The first shots have been fired. Keep busy. They'll show themselves. And I did keep busy. I found an old shovel in the shed and started turning over a small plot of ground in front of the house, clearing years of weeds. The work was hard. The soil was packed tight, and the thistle roots ran deep. But with each root I pulled, I felt like I was freeing more than the earth. I was freeing myself. I was ripping out my past, my blind love, my self-sacrifice. It hurt, but it was necessary. On the 5th day after the mortgage call, the bomb dropped. That evening, Ethan's voice held a quiet, controlled triumph. Well then, Mrs. Hayes, the ice has broken. This morning, a courier delivered a certified letter to your old address for your son and his wife. I pictured it. Morning coffee in my kitchen, chatting about cabinet colors. A knock at the door. They signed casually, opened the thick envelope. What was in the letter? I asked. An official notice from me, as your attorney. It states your full, sole right to the condo, and warns that any attempt to do anything with it will be legally blocked. Most importantly, it demands they provide an explanation within 24 hours regarding the mortgage, which we assert was obtained fraudulently. I absorbed his words. But that's not all, he continued. The bank's security department received my documents and acted, fast and firm. All accounts your son could access, including credit cards and joint savings, have been frozen pending investigation. Mr. Douglas handled it personally. Frozen. Perfect word. Their world, built on my money and my betrayed trust, was suddenly under ice. Did they try anything? I asked, already knowing. Oh yes. He chuckled. The bank called me first. Your son stormed in yelling, demanding, threatening. When they explained he'd get nothing until the fraud probe is done, he went pale and left. An hour later, his wife arrived, caused a scene, demanded the manager, shouted about consumer rights, threatened to sue. They politely showed her out. Their world is collapsing, Mrs. Hayes, faster than they thought. I sat on the hilltop, wind in my hair, looking at the dark shapes of the town below. I felt no malice. I felt balance returning. Justice isn't revenge. It's putting things back where they belong. Then my phone rang again. Michael. I ended my call with Ethan and picked up. Mama, what did you do? That wasn't his usual voice. The soft, condescending tone I'd heard for years was gone. This was a high, broken scream, pure panic. I said nothing. Are you crazy? We got papers from a lawyer. The bank blocked our cards, everything. We don't even have money for groceries. Are you trying to ruin us? He was breathless with fury and fear. In the background, Vanessa was wailing, loud, dramatic, hysterical. Do you even understand what you're doing? He cried. Vanessa is sick, she can't be stressed. And you? You want to destroy our lives because you're old and senile. I didn't do anything, Michael. I answered softly, steady. The difference between his shouting and my whisper seemed to stun him. He went quiet. You did this. You and your wife. What? What did we do? We gave you a gift. We bought you a house. And this is how you repay us. You tried to steal my condo, Michael. You took out a mortgage against it when I was deathly sick. You dumped me here so I wouldn't find out until the bank took my home. That's what you did. Silence. Dead, heavy silence, like this empty town. I only heard his rough, uneven breathing. He hadn't expected it. He thought I knew nothing. He thought it was just hurt feelings, just theater. But it was a verdict. Mama, he finally rasped, his voice turning pitiful and sweet. Mommy, this is all wrong. It's a mistake, a misunderstanding. We'll explain everything. How about you call it all off, huh? Withdraw the papers. We'll come talk. Come, I said. Really? Hope crept in. You'll call it off? No. I said come. I'm waiting for you. I hung up. That was it. Now they knew. This wasn't a tantrum or wounded pride. This was war. They knew I knew their darkest secret. Panic would turn to despair, and despair makes people do reckless things. I walked down the hill. The night was dark, but I walked with certainty. I knew they would come, and I was ready. They arrived the next day, close to noon. I heard them before I saw them, the engine tearing through the sleepy quiet, tires screaming beside my house. Dust shot up and settled on the wild currant bushes. I didn't move. I sat on the porch where they'd dumped me days ago, peeling small new potatoes with an old knife. Tiny ones, the size of quail eggs from the overgrown garden. My lunch. Car doors slammed. Michael jumped out first, pale, hollow, dark circles under his eyes. He wore an expensive shirt, wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Vanessa got out slower. Her face was puffy, makeup smeared, but she still lifted her chin with that practiced, superior glare. They stopped a few feet from the porch, staring. I didn't look up. I kept peeling potatoes. The simple, steady work kept me grounded and calm. I wasn't part of their drama. I was just watching. Mama, Michael began, hoarse and pleading. He stepped forward, hands half raised like he might hug me. I didn't move. I kept my eyes on my hands. Mommy, what is this? Why are you doing this to us? I dropped the peeled potato into the bowl of water and picked up another. I was waiting for you, I said, still not looking up. That one simple sentence seemed to throw him off completely. He had expected shouting, tears, accusations, anything but this cold, calm tone. We came to talk, he stammered. Mama, this is all just a big misunderstanding. We're family. Families should help each other, not drag each other to court. His words sounded polished and practiced, but empty. There wasn't a drop of truth in them, only fear. Fear of losing everything he thought was his by right. That's when Vanessa snapped. She stepped forward, pushing Michael aside. Enough with this act, she spat, her face twisted with anger. Have you lost your mind out here in the middle of nowhere? What gives you the right to freeze our accounts? Who told you you could do that? She was practically screaming now. Her thin, sharp voice cut through the air like glass. Do you even know what you've done? She went on, waving her perfectly manicured finger at me. You've embarrassed us. We had to cancel the kitchen order. Cancel it. People are laughing at us. And me, I'm not supposed to be stressed. The doctor forbade it. I'm carrying your grandchild and you're driving us into poverty. She threw out her trump card, the pregnancy. Before, that single word would have melted my heart and made me do whatever they wanted. But not anymore. The ice in my chest didn't even crack. I slowly lifted my eyes to her and stared, long and steady, the way one looks at something unpleasant and unfamiliar. My gaze froze her mid-sentence. She went quiet for a moment, then quickly gathered herself again, her cheeks burning with anger. Michael jumped in, trying to play the peacemaker. Mama, please, Vanessa's right. She can't be upset. Let's fix this calmly, okay? I know you're hurt. We understand. Maybe the house wasn't the best idea, but we'll make it right. We'll undo everything. Just call your lawyer, tell him you've changed your mind. Right now. Here, take my phone. He held out his shiny smartphone like it was a magic solution. As if one call could erase all the lies and betrayal, like words wiped from sand by the tide. I put down the knife and the last potato into the bowl, wiped my hands on my old apron, and stood up slowly. Now we were face to face, me on the porch step, a little higher, looking down at them. You want me to call it all off? I asked quietly. Yes, yes, Mommy, Michael nodded eagerly. Vanessa stood beside him, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. So I can give you everything again? My retirement money, my condo, my life? Mama, don't exaggerate, Michael said, grimacing. The condo is ours together. We would have always taken care of you. Like you took care of me when I was sick? I asked softly. My voice was low, but in that silence it hit like thunder. They froze. I turned my eyes to Vanessa. She took a tiny step backward. I remember everything, Tiff, I said, calling her by the name she liked, something I hadn't done in years. I remember you sitting by my bedside, your caring hands, and those papers you made me sign, telling me they were from the tax office, from the HOA. Just a formality, you said. Vanessa's face went completely pale. Her rage and arrogance melted away like cheap makeup in the rain. Only raw fear remained. Michael looked at her, then back at me, confused and scared. Mama, what are you talking about? I met his eyes. There was fear there, but also confusion. Maybe he really didn't know every detail. Maybe she'd tricked him too. Or maybe he just chose not to see. It didn't matter. He was still guilty. I'm talking about the mortgage, Michael, I said clearly. The huge loan you took 8 months ago. Using my condo as collateral, with my forged signature. You got it while I was sick and half-conscious. Did you really think I'd never find out? That I'd just die quietly in this place and the bank would take my home to cover your debt? The words hit him like a punch. He actually staggered, staring at Vanessa in horror as the truth sank in. She wouldn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the dirt, on her expensive shoes, now stained with mud. Their games, their manipulations, it all fell apart. They stood there exposed, stripped of all their lies. The masks were gone. The show was over. So, Michael, I said quietly, steadily, do you still want me to call the lawyer? He couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Vanessa hunched her shoulders, shrinking from a predator into a trapped animal. The silence stretched on, heavy and final. And in that silence, whatever small piece of motherly love I still had for him died. Right there, on that porch. Leave, I said. It wasn't a command or a plea. It was just a fact, like saying, the sun is setting. They turned away without a word, not even looking at each other. Like puppets with their strings cut. They trudged back to their shiny car. The engine started, weak and hesitant. It rolled slowly down the dusty road and disappeared. I was alone again on the porch. Beside me was the bowl of peeled potatoes, my lunch, my new beginning. The air around me felt cleaner than it had in years. When they left, silence returned. But this silence was different. Not heavy and suffocating like the first day. This one was calm, peaceful, full of dignity. I boiled the potatoes on the stove. They tasted better than any meal I'd ever had. I ate slowly at my clean table, staring out the freshly washed window. Outside, in the messy yard, I noticed a few peony bushes still alive, dark red buds about to bloom. I thought it was over. I thought, after being exposed, they'd finally leave me alone and try to clean up the mess they'd made. But I was wrong again. I forgot. When an animal is cornered, it doesn't repent. It bites. About a week passed. In that time, I met my only neighbor, or rather, he met me. One morning, I was drawing water from the well when I heard a calm, low voice behind me. Here, neighbor, let me help you. That windlass isn't a woman's job. I turned around and saw a tall, lean old man with a gray beard and striking blue eyes. With one easy motion, he finished winding the handle, lifted the heavy bucket, and set it down. Harold Bennett, he said, reaching out a calloused hand. I live 2 houses down. Last of the old guard around here. Margaret Hayes, I replied, shaking his hand. That's how we met. Harold, Uncle Harold, as he told me to call him, turned out to be an old-fashioned man, reserved but kind and full of sense. He didn't ask how I ended up here. He didn't need to. He'd seen the car that dropped me off and drove away. He'd seen me working alone, trying to make the house livable. He understood everything without a word. He started helping me, sometimes bringing firewood, sometimes goat's milk. Other evenings he'd just sit on the porch, talking about the weather or the harvest. His quiet presence brought me peace. Around him, I didn't feel alone. I felt safe. Then came the final battle. One morning, as I was watering the peonies, I heard engines. Not one, several. A whole convoy stopped near my gate. 3 cars parked, and people began to step out. I recognized them. My cousin, Aunt Linda from Raleigh, with her husband. My late husband's nephew Stephen with his wife. A few other distant relatives I'd only seen at weddings or funerals. And leading them, like generals at the front, were Michael and Vanessa. Michael looked even worse, thin, twitching, exhausted. But Vanessa, she had transformed. She wore a simple dark dress, no makeup, her hair in a neat bun. Her face carried a look of quiet sorrow. She clung to Michael's arm like a loyal wife helping her broken husband. A perfect scene. The heartbroken son and his suffering wife. They arranged the relatives in a semicircle, like at a courtroom. And urged by Vanessa's soft whispers, Michael began to speak. "Dear family, Aunt Linda, Stephen, thank you for coming," he said, his voice trembling but rehearsed. "We called because a terrible tragedy has struck our family." He paused dramatically. The relatives looked at me, confused and sympathetic. "Our mother, Margaret Hayes," he continued with emotion. "She's sick. After her pneumonia, her mind hasn't been the same. She forgets things, mixes them up. She's imagined conspiracies, imagined mortgages. She doesn't recognize us anymore. She accuses us of horrible things." I stood there, watering can in hand, staring in disbelief. They were trying to declare me insane, to make their crime look like a delusion of mine. "We wanted to get her help," Vanessa added in her sweet, fake voice, dabbing her dry eyes with a tissue. "We searched for the best doctors, a clinic, but she ran away. She found this abandoned house somewhere, and has been hiding here ever since. She refused our help," Vanessa said in a trembling, pitiful voice. "She blocked all the accounts so we couldn't even pay for her treatment. She's a danger to herself. We're afraid she might do something terrible." Aunt Linda, a soft-hearted woman, gasped and pressed her hands to her chest. "Evie, sweetheart, what's all this I'm hearing? Please come home. Come back to the city. You need to be in a hospital, darling," she said, her eyes filled with worry. They all looked at me as if I were some madwoman. Part pity, part fear, and part disgust. I could see it in their eyes. They already believed Michael and Vanessa's story. Their plan was cruelly simple, and devilishly smart. Who would believe a lonely old woman living in a rundown shack over her polite, loving son and his pregnant wife? I stayed silent. What could I say? Any word from me, any protest, any raised tone, they'd call it a symptom. See? Aggression, confusion, paranoia. And that would be it. My fate sealed. It felt like I'd lost, the final, dirtiest battle. But then, just as hope began to fade, I heard the squeak of the gate behind me. "Mind if I'm a little nosy?" came a calm, steady voice. "What's going on here?" Everyone turned. Uncle Harold was standing on the path. He wore his usual work clothes, but he stood tall and proud, like an old general. His clear blue eyes swept over the whole crowd, pausing on Michael and Vanessa before landing on me. "And you are?" Vanessa asked sharply, looking him up and down with disdain. "Me," he said calmly. "I'm the neighbor. Harold Bennett. And who are you nice folks, showing up here to gang up on this woman?" "We're her family," Michael barked. "We came to rescue her. She's not right in the head." Uncle Harold walked over slowly, until he was standing beside me. He didn't look at me, but I could feel his solid presence, like a shield. "Not right in the head, you say?" he said, squinting at Michael. "That's strange. I've been talking to Margaret Hayes for a week now, and she seems perfectly sane to me. Sharp, clear-minded, strong. I saw what happened with my own eyes. How her own son brought her here on her birthday and dumped her like she was useless trash." The relatives murmured among themselves. Aunt Linda turned to Michael, her expression uncertain now. "And I also see," Uncle Harold continued, his voice growing stronger, "a woman who's taken this broken-down shack and made it a home all by herself. She lit her own stove, cleaned this place, and even started a garden. Does that sound like someone crazy to you? To me, that's how people act when the world takes everything from them. but can't take away their will to live. He stepped closer to Michael and Vanessa. And as for you too, he said, his tone cutting, you look strange to me. You drove up here in an expensive car, dressed like you're going to a party, yet you say your accounts are empty. How exactly did you afford this trip? You don't look like grieving children. You look like con artists trying to squeeze the last bit of money out of an old woman. Only instead of threats, you're using tears and lies. He said it loud enough for everyone to hear, and his words hit hard. The relatives who had come to help Michael were now staring at him and Vanessa with suspicion. Their perfect show was falling apart right in front of them. Aunt Linda walked up to me. Evie, is it true? He kicked you out. I nodded quietly. That was all it took. Their lies shattered like thin glass. The relatives began whispering angrily, glaring at Michael and Vanessa. Stephen, my late husband's nephew, a big man, stepped up to Michael. What the hell are you doing, you lowlife? He growled. Trying to kill your own mother? Michael stumbled backward. Vanessa grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the car. Their big family intervention had turned into public humiliation. They fled, escaping under the sharp, judgmental stares of the very people they'd brought as their witnesses. One by one, the cars turned around and drove off. Soon, only Uncle Harold and I were left standing in the quiet road. I turned to him. Thank you, I whispered. He smiled through his gray beard. Don't thank me, neighbor. Telling the truth isn't help, it's a duty. I watched the dust from their cars fade into the distance, and I knew this was the end. Not a courtroom victory, not a bank win, something deeper. They had lost right here, on this land, in front of simple, honest people. And that loss was worse than any financial ruin. It was moral bankruptcy, total and final. As the dust settled on the road, the dust of my past life settled too. Since that day, when they tried to turn my shame into theirs, I never heard from them again. Ethan Cole, my loyal lawyer, handled the rest. The bank officially ruled the mortgage fraudulent, especially after my relatives A.G. Hayes to testify about Michael and Vanessa's lies and their attempt to declare me incompetent. All charges against me were dropped. I didn't care to know what became of them afterward. I only know they faced criminal charges for fraud, and they had to face the fallout alone. Without my help, without my money, and without my forgiveness. Their world, built on lies, collapsed and buried them beneath it. And my life was just beginning at 63. The first thing I did, once everything was settled, was sell the condo on Peachtree Road. No tears, no regrets. I went there one last time to collect the things that truly mattered. My photo album, a few books, and Richard's old armchair. As I walked through those empty, echoing rooms, I felt a pang of nostalgia. But I also knew it wasn't home anymore. It was just property, cold and lifeless. My home was here now, in this quiet, forgotten town. With the money from the sale, and my secret savings, I invested carefully, just as Ethan advised. Nothing flashy, just enough to make sure I'd never depend on anyone again. Enough to buy firewood in winter, fix the roof, and take care of myself if I ever got sick. Then I began to rebuild, literally and figuratively. I hired 2 hardworking men from a nearby county. They fixed the roof, installed new wooden windows, rebuilt the porch, and built a proper stove with a hearth. I didn't just watch them work, I worked with them. Hauling, cleaning, painting. At first, they were surprised. Then they started to respect me. Margaret, you're something else, their foreman Ben said one day. You've got more backbone than most men I know. I smiled. All my life, I thought I was soft, too gentle. Turns out that strength had always been there. It just needed a reason to show itself. Before my eyes, the house transformed. The gloomy, broken shack became a warm, bright cottage. I whitewashed the walls myself, hung gingham curtains with tiny flowers, placed Richard's chair in the corner, arranged my books on the shelves. And just like that, the house breathed again. When spring came, I tackled the garden. Uncle Harold helped me uproot old, dying trees and plant new ones. For the first time, I planted potatoes, onions, and carrots with my own hands. And the earth rewarded me, a rich, generous harvest. The peonies I'd noticed that first week grew into full, lush bushes, blooming so beautifully they took my breath away. I remembered how my grandmother had taught me to embroider as a child. I found her old hoops, bought thread and cloth from town, and in the evenings I began to stitch flowers, birds, simple patterns. My fingers still remembered. It was peaceful work. It calmed my mind and healed me. I didn't talk to Richard's photo anymore. I didn't need to. I could feel him there, proud of me. Uncle Harold and I became true friends. We never pried into each other's pasts. We didn't need to. He'd visit in the evenings with goat's milk or herbs. We'd sit on the new porch, drink tea from old cups, and watch the sun go down in silence. A silence that said more than words ever could. Sometimes I thought about Michael, but it wasn't pain anymore. It was pity, like for a stranger who lost his way. I gave him everything I could, but I couldn't give him what he refused to have, a conscience. That was his choice, not my failure. And I finally let him go, cutting that last invisible string between us. He was no longer my duty, my sorrow, or my burden. He was just a man who had once been my son. Now I'm 65. I'm sitting on my porch with a cup of hot herbal tea from my own garden. The sun is setting behind the trees, painting the sky in soft pinks and gold. The air smells of grass and wildflowers. Inside, the fire crackles warmly. A little stray kitten named Whiskers is purring on my lap. I look down at my hands, rough from gardening, nails unpolished, but these are the hands of someone truly alive. Someone building her own life. Sometimes I even feel grateful to Michael and Vanessa. If not for their cruelty, I might have spent the rest of my years as a ghost in someone else's story. I would never have known my own strength. I would never have met Uncle Harold. Never watched my peonies bloom or tasted water from my own well. They tried to bury me, but instead they gave me life. A real one. I take a sip of tea. It's earthy, fragrant, alive. And I think, dignity isn't something others give you. It's what you find inside yourself. What you reclaim from fear, pain, and despair. What you take back when everything seems lost. That quiet, hard-won peace. That's true happiness. That's real F. Haysom. If you liked my story, drop a 1 in the comments. If it touched you, like the video and share a little love. There are more stories like this waiting on my channel. Go check them out. 2 new ones are on screen right now, both favorites. Thank you for being here. See you in the next one. With love.